My name's Emily Eckhoff, and I'm a real estate agent with Sotheby's International Realty. And today I'm here with Noah Sheedy from Latitude Insurance.
Correct. Hello. Thank you for having me,
Thank
Emily.
you for coming. So to start, Noah, tell us about your background and how you started with Latitude.
Sure. Yeah. I've been kind of a passionate mountain community person for, I don't know, most of my adult life, and bounced around from Europe to Colorado, ski towns in Colorado, where I worked honestly mostly in the ski industry as an executive, and was looking for a career change and kind of something to re-energize myself. And one thing led to another, and went into business with a good friend of mine to open up an agency in Big Sky, Montana. So
Nice.
I brought my family up. Yeah.
Lucky us.
Yeah, I know. Lucky us too.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Latitude.
Sure. Yeah. So Latitude Insurance, we kind of consider ourselves a small boutique agency.
Okay.
Really catering mostly to Mountain West communities, very high end, very desirable communities. It's kind of one of the things that all of the principals within Latitude have in common is we're all very kind of passionate about the mountains and, living and working in these great communities. So, we have offices, obviously, Big Sky. We started in Telluride.
Okay.
That's where Clifford Hansen, the founder, kicked it off. And so Big Sky, Telluride, we've got Aspen, we've got office in Denver, Jackson Hole. We've got a support office in Montrose.
Nice.
Great.
Noah, what kind of insurance do people need living in Big Sky?
Okay, good question. So they, all the standard stuff that you'd have on your primary home, right? I mean, when we're a lot of times, whether it's a local here in the mountain or someone who's buying a second home, you're still going to have that property coverage. You're still going to have liability coverage, contents coverage for everything in the home. I would say really the biggest difference between that we deal with a lot in the mountain communities and the resort communities is, additional coverage for, when the property is either rented long-term or short-term, which,
Right.
Obviously as a primary home, you're not renting it out. So we deal with that quite a bit.
Right. Is wildfire insurance.
Totally. So yeah, wildfire insurance is, for a lot of people in the country, it may ride on their policy and they just never even know it, right? Because that's not where they live.
Yeah.
But very common, it's probably certainly, in our Mountain West communities, the highest natural disaster risk that's out there. And so carriers are very focused on looking at the wildfire risk with a very fine-tooth comb, and sometimes, kind of adjusting what they're willing to take on because of that risk.
A coverage area, you have to be within a certain amount of miles from the three fire departments we have in town?
Yep. So that's pretty standard, right? We call those protection classes. Okay. And 5 miles is a very magic number. Okay. Within kind of rating, what each property, what level of protection class they fall into. And so that 5 miles threshold is a pretty standard metric. And so, yeah, you see this kind of, this radius around each of the fire departments and that mileage. But, it goes beyond that, certainly, right? Like a lot of these individual communities in the mountains, they are in these very dramatic, beautiful mountainous settings, but that also makes it more difficult to put in standard utilities that our suburban homes we take for advantage or take for granted, right? I mean, that could be fire hydrants is a great example of that, right? And so we could have a home that's within 5 miles and someone thinks like, oh yeah, I live right next to the fire department. This is great. If there isn't a fire hydrant there, that, from an insurance carrier's point of view, that just makes the risk that much riskier, right? Because the fire department could get to you, but if they don't have access to pressurized water and a lot of it to put a fire out, if it's right around you, it becomes much more difficult to protect that home, right? So it's layers.
Yes.
We deal with layers for sure.
Complicated.
Yes.
So the other night we were at a party and someone was talking about landslide insurance. Is that something we need to be concerned with here?
Well, I mean, certainly we live in the mountains, and when it rains and snows and the ground gets saturated, if it's
Things shift.
the right conditions, they're going to shift. So that is certainly, something that we want to look at. A lot of times that comes down to when a house or a home or a property is being built, engineering that goes into that, and understanding how structurally sound the ground is or is not. And then we, can certainly tailor coverage to meet those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for someone wanting to buy a house in Big Sky, what do they need to bring to you? What do they need? What information do you need from them?
Yeah. So, all kind of the standard stuff. I will say to answer that on a very 50,000 foot view level, the two things insurance carriers basically rate, whether they're going to take on a risk or not and how much they're going to charge for it is the property. What is the property? Where is it? And what is it, right? How many square feet? What's it built out of? How old's the roof? How old's the electrical and the heating and air cool, all that stuff. They look at that. But then they also, what some people often forget is the other part of that equation is who owns the property, who is getting the insurance. So all of us carry insurance scores, just like we carry credit scores on the financial world. And so, if I'm someone that maybe is a little bit riskier and I'm not a risk manager in my head and in my personal life, and I get into car accidents and I forget to turn off the stove after I'm cooking and I've had house fires, all those things, we kind of carry an insurance score as well. And so an insurance carrier may look at a property that's being sold and it's got great coverage by the current homeowner, and the person that's buying it thinks, perfect, the current owner of this home told me they have this kind of coverage and this is how much it costs, so that's my expectation. But then all of a sudden, I'm a pretty risky guy and I'm going to buy that home. And the carrier then looks at me and says, well, you look a little riskier.
Actually,
We're going to reevaluate. So, on a very high level, those are basically the two things that they look at. So, we're always going to ask personal details, birthday and contact information and mailing addresses and, all that standard stuff. And then we're going to also ask all the questions about not only just, the size of the home, but what are there safeguards on that home?
Right.
How old is the roof, right? If the roof is old, more likely to leak.
Right.
Okay. Insurance carriers look at all that stuff. So, it gets on a very high level, and then also gets into very nitty gritty stuff. Micro. Totally. Yep.
Great. Okay. So at the end of all these interviews, I do a little quick fire.
Okay.
You ready?
I doubt it, but let's do it.
What is your favorite season in Big Sky?
Summer.
Okay. What's your favorite restaurant?
Uso and Spur.
And what's your favorite thing to do in Big Sky?
My
I know.
Gosh,
I know.
That is a really hard one. That's like the season.
Narrow it down.
Mountain biking in the summer, skiing with my family on the mountain in the winter.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
If you want more information from Noah, we'll put all the information down at the bottom, and you can be in touch. Thanks.
Yeah. Can't wait to meet y'all.